The Magic of Reality, by Richard Dawkins. Introduction. Have you ever looked up at a rainbow and felt a sense of wonder? A perfect arc of impossible color painted across a dark sky. For thousands of years, we told stories to explain it. The ancient Norse believed it was a bridge for the gods to travel to Earth. The Jewish and Sumerian traditions saw it as a promise from the heavens after a great flood. These are magical tales. But what if I told you there's another kind of magic? A magic that lies not in myth, but in the exhilaration of discovering the real answer. A magic that, once you understand it, is more awe-inspiring than any story we could ever invent. This is the magic of reality. And it's the journey we're about to take with one of the most brilliant scientific minds of our time, Richard Dawkins. In his book, The Magic of Reality, which has captivated readers around the world, Dawkins invites us to look at the universe with fresh eyes. He doesn't just want to give us the answers, he wants to show us how we know what's really true. Dawkins himself is a fascinating figure. A professor at Oxford University, he first changed the world with his groundbreaking book The Selfish Gene. But with the magic of reality, he set out on a different quest, to share the profound beauty of science with a new generation. He speaks not just as a scientist, but as a detective, mining all the fields of knowledge for clues about our world. So, in the next few minutes, I'm going to share the essence of this incredible book. We won't just learn that the universe is 13.8 billion years old, we'll learn how a rainbow can tell us its age. We won't just learn that we evolved, we'll walk back through 185 million generations to meet our fishy ancestor. My promise to you is this: by the end of our time together, you won't just have a list of scientific facts. You'll hold the tools to think like a scientist yourself, and you'll see that the real world is far more magical than any fairy tale. Book summary. Let's start with a question that sits at the very heart of our journey. What is real? It sounds simple, but think about it for a moment. You know the chair you're sitting on is real. You can feel it. You can see the light in your room. You can hear the sound of my voice. Our five senses do a wonderful job of convincing us that things exist. But what about things we can't see? What about a bacterium, too small for the naked eye? Or a distant galaxy, so far away its light has traveled for millions of years to reach us? We know they are real, but only because we've built special instruments, microscopes and telescopes, to extend the reach of our senses. We understand how these instruments work, so we trust what they show us. This is the first step in understanding reality. We can know things directly, through our senses, or indirectly, through instruments that help our senses. But Dawkins shows us there's a third, more powerful way we come to know what's real, especially when we're dealing with things we can never see directly, like the inside of an atom or the story of our own evolution. This method is the heart of science itself. It involves creating a model. Now, a model isn't just a guess. It's an imagined explanation for how something might work. For example, in the 19th century, a monk named Gregor Mendel wanted to understand how traits were passed down from parents to children in his pea plants. He never saw a gene. No one had. But he created a model in his mind, an idea of invisible units of heredity, and used it to make predictions. He calculated that if his model was right, he should see 3 times as many smooth peas as wrinkly ones in a specific experiment. And when he counted them, that's exactly what he found. His model, an invention of his imagination, had successfully predicted something in the real world. This is the rhythm of science. Imagine a model, test its predictions, and if the predictions are wrong, you change the model or throw it out. If they are right, your confidence grows that your model reflects a piece of reality. This brings us to the other key word in our title, magic. Dawkins explains there are 3 kinds of magic. First, there's supernatural magic, the kind in fairy tales, where a witch turns a prince into a frog. We all know this isn't real. Second, there's stage magic, the brilliant illusions performed by conjurers. We know it's a trick, a clever deception of our senses, but it's real in the sense that something entertaining is truly happening. But the third kind of magic is the one that matters most. Dawkins calls it poetic magic. It's that feeling of awe you get when you look up at a sky full of stars on a clear night, or the goosebumps from a beautiful piece of music. It's the magic of being moved by something profound and beautiful. The entire purpose of this book is to show that reality, the world as understood through science, is filled with this poetic magic, and it's a magic that is all the more wonderful because it's real. and we can understand how it works. So, let's put these tools to the test and begin our journey by asking one of the biggest questions of all. Who was the first person? For millennia, every culture has created its own origin myth. A tribe in Tasmania told of a god named Moini who fell from the stars and, in his dying moments, created humans. But he was in such a rush that he forgot to give them knees and accidentally gave them kangaroo tails, so they couldn't sit down. It was only when another god, Dramordiner, took pity on them that he fixed their knees and cut off their tails. The ancient Hebrew story tells of a god who formed the first man, Adam, from dust, and then made the first woman, Eve, from one of Adam's ribs. The Norse Vikings believed the first man and woman were carved from two tree trunks found on a seashore. These are wonderful stories. But what does reality have to tell us? Here's the surprising scientific answer. There never was a first person. This sounds strange, I know. But think about it. Every person who has ever lived had parents. And those parents were people too. And they had parents, who were also people. You can go back and back, through your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, and you will never find a generation where a non-person suddenly gave birth to a person. So how did we get here? Dawkins asks us to perform a brilliant thought experiment. Imagine you have a photograph of yourself. Now, place a photo of your father on top of it, then his father, then his father's father, and so on. Keep stacking these photos of your direct male ancestors, one after another. How far back do we need to go? Let's go back 185 million generations. It's an impossible stack of photos to imagine. If each photo was a postcard, the stack would be over 40 miles long. So let's lay it out on a very long bookshelf. At one end is your picture. At the far end, 40 miles away, is the picture of your 185 million greats-grandfather. What does he look like? A caveman? An old man with a long beard? Not even close. Believe it or not, your 185 million greats-grandfather was a fish. Now, here's the crucial part. If you were to walk along this 40-mile bookshelf, looking at each photo one by one, you would see no sudden changes. The man in photo number 50,000 would look just like his father in photo number 50,001. Every creature in the line belongs to the same species as its parents and its children. And yet, when you stand back and look at the entire 40-mile journey, you see a human at one end and a fish at the other. How can this be? It's because evolution is a process of incredibly gradual change, happening over immense stretches of time. It's like your own life. You were once a baby, and one day you will be an old person. But there is never a single day when you wake up and can say, "Yesterday I was a child, but today I am an adolescent." The change is so slow it's invisible from one day to the next, but undeniable over a lifetime. Evolution is the same. There was never a fish-like creature that gave birth to a reptile, or an ape-like creature that gave birth to a human. Each step was tiny, but with millions upon millions of generations, those tiny steps add up to transform one kind of animal into another. How do we know this isn't just a story? Two powerful lines of evidence confirm it. The first is fossils. Fossils are the stony remains of ancient life, and they show us snapshots from this long journey. We can even date them using radioactive clocks in the rocks, like the isotope uranium-238, which decays into lead at a known rate. These clocks allow us to place our ancestors on a timeline. Fossils show us that about 6 million years ago, our ancestors were apes living in Africa. Go back 63 million years, and they were small, lemur-like creatures. Go back 340 million years, and they were amphibians, a bit like newts. And further back still, we find our fish ancestors. The second, even more powerful line of evidence is found within our own bodies, our DNA. DNA is the instruction manual for building a living creature, written in a 4-letter chemical alphabet. It turns out that all living things, humans, chimpanzees, mice, even bananas, use the exact same genetic code. We are all written in the same language. We can compare the DNA of different creatures to see how closely they are related. For example, there's a gene called FOXP2, which is over 2,000 letters long. A chimpanzee's version of this gene has only 9 different letters compared to ours. A mouse's version has 139 different letters. This pattern holds true across thousands of genes. It tells us, with mathematical certainty, that chimpanzees are our very close cousins, and mice are more distant cousins. And the most wonderful part? We share some genes, recognizably the same, with every living thing on Earth. Your family tree doesn't just include your grandparents and your great-grandparents. It includes chimpanzees, mice, iguanas, dandelions, mushrooms, and bacteria. Every last one of them is our cousin. That, Dawkins argues, is a far more wonderful thought than any myth. And we know for certain it is literally true. This brings us to our next great question. If we all share a common ancestor, why are there so many different kinds of animals? Why didn't life just stay as one thing? To explain this, Dawkins uses another wonderful analogy: the evolution of languages. Think about it. Languages like Spanish, French, and Italian are all quite similar. They are known as the Romance languages because they all descended from one common ancestor: Latin, the language of ancient Rome. How did one language become many? Imagine two groups of people who originally speak the same language but get separated by a mountain range or an ocean. Over centuries, their languages will begin to drift apart. Small changes in pronunciation and vocabulary will accumulate, generation by generation. After enough time has passed, the two groups will no longer be able to understand each other. Their single language has branched into two. Species do the exact same thing. And the key ingredient for this branching is separation. Dawkins points to the Galapagos Islands, which famously inspired Charles Darwin. These are volcanic islands, relatively young, hundreds of miles from the mainland. At some point long ago, a few land iguanas must have rafted across the ocean from South America, perhaps on a mat of uprooted trees, just as was witnessed happening on another island in 1995. Once on the Galapagos, these pioneer iguanas were isolated. Their gene pool, the total collection of genes in the population, was now separate from the mainland population. Over many generations, they evolved to suit their new, harsh volcanic environment. But the story doesn't stop there. The Galapagos is a chain of islands. Occasionally, a few iguanas would raft from one island to another. These island hoppings were rare enough that the populations on each island had time to evolve in their own separate directions. Just as Latin drifted into French on one side of the mountains and Italian on the other, the ancestral iguana population drifted into different forms on each island. Eventually, they became so different that even if they met again, they could no longer interbreed. They had become separate species. Today, there are 3 distinct species of land iguana on the Galapagos. And, in a spectacular evolutionary twist, one population even adapted to a life in the sea, becoming the world's only marine iguanas, which feed on seaweed. This process, repeated over and over for billions of years, is what created the magnificent diversity of life we see today. It is all driven by the engine Darwin discovered: natural selection. It's not just random drifting. In any environment, some individuals will have traits that make them slightly better at surviving and reproducing. Their genes are more likely to be passed on. This process, repeated generation after generation, nudges evolution in the direction of survival. It builds bodies that are good at surviving, whether that means having the sharp teeth of a lion or the camouflage of a leaf insect. Every living creature you see is an intricate machine, sculpted by natural selection for one purpose: passing on the genes that made it. So we've explored our own origins and the rich tapestry of life. Now, let's zoom in much, much closer and ask, what is everything actually made of? The ancient Greeks proposed that everything was made of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. But one thinker, Democritus, had a more radical idea. He suggested that if you keep cutting something into smaller and smaller pieces, you would eventually reach a particle so small it couldn't be cut any further. He called this an atom, from the Greek word atomos, meaning uncuttable. Democritus was astonishingly close to the truth. Everything is indeed made of atoms. But we now know there are about 90 different kinds of naturally occurring atoms, which we call elements, things like hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and iron. Most things we see are not pure elements but compounds, where atoms of different elements are joined together to form molecules. Water, for instance, is H2O, one oxygen atom joined to 2 hydrogen atoms. Sometimes, these atoms arrange themselves in a highly ordered, repeating pattern, like soldiers on parade. This is what we call a crystal. A diamond is a giant crystal made of nothing but carbon atoms, arranged in a perfect 3-dimensional grid. But here is where reality gets truly strange. If we were to build a scale model of that diamond crystal, and we represented the nucleus of each carbon atom with a football, how far away do you think the next football would be? A few feet? 100 yards? The answer is over 15 kilometers, or about 9 miles. Think about that. Even the hardest substance we know, a diamond, is almost entirely empty space. The same is true of the rock beneath your feet, the chair you're sitting on, and your own body. We are all mostly empty space. So why don't we just fall through the floor? Why can't we walk through walls? Because what we feel is solid isn't the matter itself, but the powerful forces that act between the atoms, holding them in a fixed structure. It's these invisible fields that give the world its feeling of solidity. Now let's dive even deeper, inside the atom itself. For a long time, the atom was thought to be the smallest thing. But we now know that atoms have an internal structure. At the center is a dense nucleus, containing particles called protons and neutrons. Whizzing around the nucleus are much smaller particles called electrons. The number of protons in the nucleus defines what an element is. An atom with 1 proton is always hydrogen. An atom with 6 protons is always carbon. An atom with 82 protons is always lead. This is why you can't cut an atom of lead any smaller and still have lead. If you managed to knock a proton out of its nucleus, it would cease to be lead and become a different element altogether. And what are protons and neutrons made of? Even smaller particles called quarks. But here, Dawkins says, we reach the edge of what can be easily explained. We are entering a wonderland of the mysterious, where our everyday understanding of things in space begins to break down. Having explored the incredibly small, let's now turn our gaze outwards, to the vastness of the cosmos, and ask 2 questions that have dominated human curiosity forever. Why do we have night and day, and winter and summer? And what is the sun? The illusion that the sun moves across the sky is one of the most powerful we experience. It feels like we are stationary and the sun is making a daily journey from east to west. But, as you know, it's an illusion of relative movement, like when you're on a train at a station and the train next to you starts moving. For a moment, it feels like you are the one moving backwards. The daily cycle is caused by the Earth spinning on its axis, like a top, once every 24 hours. We are the ones moving, turning to face the sun for day, and turning away from it into our own shadow for night. But what about the seasons? Many people think it's because the Earth is closer to the sun in the summer. A simple fact proves this wrong. When it's summer in the northern hemisphere, it's winter in the southern hemisphere. An Australian might be having a Christmas barbecue on a hot beach while someone in Canada is shivering in the snow. They can't both be closer to the sun. The real reason for the seasons is that the Earth's axis is tilted. Imagine a rod running through the Earth from the North Pole to the South Pole. This rod isn't straight up and down relative to our orbit around the sun. It's tilted at an angle of about 23.5 degrees. This means that for part of the year, the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. The sun's rays hit it more directly, and the days are longer. This is our summer. 6 months later, as the Earth continues its orbit, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun. The sun's rays hit it at a shallower angle, spreading their energy over a wider area, and the days are shorter. This is our winter. This brings us to the sun itself. For most of history, we worshipped it as a god, a chariot of fire, or a cosmic egg. But what is it, really? The sun is a star. It is no different from the billions of other stars you see at night, except for one crucial fact: it is incredibly close to us. To give you a sense of scale, if the sun were a football, the Earth would be a tiny peppercorn about 25 meters away. The nearest other star, Proxima Centauri, would be another, slightly smaller football, 6,500 kilometers away. Stars are different from planets because they are massive enough for their own gravity to create immense pressure and heat at their core. When the temperature gets high enough, millions of degrees, a star ignites, becoming a colossal nuclear furnace. It starts fusing hydrogen atoms together to make helium, releasing the vast amounts of energy we see as light and feel as heat. The sun, and every other star, is the powerhouse of its system. It is the ultimate source of nearly all energy for life on Earth. Plants capture sunlight and use its energy to create sugars. Herbivores eat the plants, carnivores eat the herbivores, and at every step, that original solar energy is passed along the chain. The energy that powers your muscles as you walk, the heat from a wood fire, even the power from fossil fuels like coal, all of it is just stored sunlight, captured by plants millions of years ago. And this leads us to the grandest question of them all. We know what the sun is. We know what the earth is. But when, and how, did all of it begin? The answer, incredibly, lies hidden in a rainbow. As we learned, Isaac Newton showed that white light from the sun is not pure, but is a mixture of all the colors of the spectrum. A prism, or a raindrop, can bend this light and splay the colors out for us to see. In the 19th century, scientists developed an instrument called a spectroscope, which is like a very precise prism. When they pointed at the light from our sun or other stars, they saw something amazing. The spectrum wasn't a smooth, continuous rainbow. It was crossed by a pattern of thin, dark lines, like a barcode. It turned out that these barcode lines are the unique chemical fingerprints of the elements. Sodium has one pattern, hydrogen has another, iron another still. For the first time, we could look at a distant star, millions of light years away, and know exactly what it was made of, just by reading its barcode of light. But then, in the 1920s, the astronomer Edwin Hubble noticed something even more profound. When he looked at the light from distant galaxies, he saw the familiar barcodes of elements like sodium and hydrogen, but the entire barcode pattern was shifted towards the red end of the spectrum. And the further away a galaxy was, the greater its red shift. What did this mean? It's something called the Doppler effect, which you've experienced with sound. When an ambulance speeds past you, the pitch of its siren seems to drop as it moves away. The sound waves are being stretched out, making the wavelength longer, which our ears hear as a lower pitch. The red shift is the exact same effect, but with light. Red light has a longer wavelength than blue light. The fact that the light from distant galaxies is redshifted means that their light waves are being stretched. And the only way for that to happen is if those galaxies are rushing away from us at incredible speeds. Hubble discovered that the entire universe is expanding. And if it's expanding, that means in the past, it must have been smaller. So scientists did the logical thing. They ran the film backwards. They calculated how long it would take for all the galaxies, rushing away from each other now, to come back together to a single point. The answer they found is that everything, all matter, all energy, even space and time itself, exploded into existence from an infinitesimally small, hot point between 13 and 14 billion years ago. This was the Big Bang. The story of the universe, and our place in it, began in that singular, spectacular moment. So, here we are, on a small, rocky planet orbiting a medium-sized star, in a quiet corner of one galaxy among billions. We know how the universe began. We know the story of our evolution. But one question remains, a question that fuels our science fiction and our deepest curiosity. Are we alone? This is one of the few questions in the book where Dawkins admits that nobody knows the answer for sure. But science can help us make an educated guess. First, how many planets are there? Until recently, we only knew of the planets in our own solar system. But using clever techniques, like measuring the tiny wobble a planet's gravity causes in its star, astronomers have now detected thousands of planets orbiting other stars. Given that there are something like 10,000 billion stars in the observable universe, the number of planets is almost certainly staggering. But how many of them could support life? Scientists look for planets in the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, but just right for liquid water to exist, which we believe is essential for life as we know it. We are already finding planets that fit this description, like one orbiting a star called Gliese 581. If life does exist out there, what might it look like? Science fiction often gives us bug-eyed monsters, but Dawkins suggests that the fundamental pressures of evolution might lead to some familiar solutions. For example, light travels in straight lines. Anywhere there is a star, there will be light, and using light to form images is an incredibly useful way to navigate the world. It's no surprise that eyes have evolved on our planet at least 40 separate times. So, it's not just a failure of imagination to think that aliens, if they exist, might very well have eyes. This brings us to our final question, and perhaps the most personal one. Why do bad things happen? Why do earthquakes destroy cities? And why do good people get sick? Many myths try to answer this by blaming cosmic mistakes or the sins of our ancestors. The scientific answer is more profound and, in its own way, more comforting. The universe, Dawkins explains, simply does not care about us. An earthquake happens because tectonic plates shift. It has a cause, but not a purpose. It is not a punishment. It is not unfair. It just is. Good things and bad things happen to everyone, not because of some cosmic justice, but because things happen. However, there is one area where the world is out to get you, and that is in the realm of biology. If you are an antelope, a lion is actively working for your downfall. If you are a human, a virus is evolving to bypass your defenses. This is the reality of the struggle for existence that Darwin described. Life is not indifferent. Your enemies, your predators, your parasites, your competitors, have been shaped by natural selection to succeed at your expense. This constant battle is the engine of evolution, a process of incredible creativity, but also one of immense suffering. And so we arrive at the end of our journey, back where we started, with the question of miracles. What should we think when someone claims that a statue wept, or that a ghost appeared, or that water was turned into wine? The 18th century philosopher David Hume offered a simple, powerful tool for thinking about this. He said we should always ask ourselves, what is more likely? Let's take the famous miracle at Fatima, Portugal, in 1917, where a crowd of 70,000 people supposedly saw the sun dance in the sky. What is more likely? 1. That the sun, a gigantic ball of nuclear fire 1,000,000 times the size of Earth, actually broke from its position, hurtling towards a small town in Portugal in a way that would have ended all life on our planet, and then returned to its normal place. Or 2. That a group of people, staring at the sun on a cloudy day, something that can damage your eyes and cause visual distortions, experienced a shared illusion, a story which was then exaggerated and spread as a rumor. Hume's point is that, however unlikely the second option seems, it is vastly more likely than the first. A story being misremembered or exaggerated is common. The laws of physics being shattered is not. This is the ultimate magic of reality. We don't need to invent supernatural stories to explain the world. The real explanations, discovered through the patient, brilliant work of science, are more beautiful, more elegant, and more awe-inspiring than any myth could ever be. Science doesn't take away the wonder, it adds to it. It gives us a universe far grander than our ancestors could have dreamed of, and it invites us to be a part of the magnificent quest to understand it. The truth, as Dawkins shows us, has a magic all its own. Commentary. What I love most about the magic of reality is that it's not just a book of answers. It's a book that teaches you how to ask questions. It hands you a toolkit for thinking, a way to navigate a world that is full of misinformation, ancient myths, and modern rumors. Dawkins' central message is one of empowerment. You don't have to take anyone's word for it. You can look at the evidence, you can test the ideas, and you can come to understand the world for yourself. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the idea of poetic magic. For centuries, there has been this false battle between science and wonder, as if to explain something is to destroy its beauty. Dawkins argues the complete opposite. To understand how a rainbow works, to know that it's made of sunlight being split into its constituent colors by millions of tiny, falling raindrops, doesn't make it less beautiful. It makes it more beautiful. It connects you to the deep and elegant laws of physics that govern the entire universe. It transforms a fleeting spectacle into a moment of profound connection with reality. So, how can you start applying the ideas from this book today? It's simpler than you might think. Here are a couple of small actions. First, practice asking Hume's question. The next time you hear a sensational story, an urban legend, or a claim that seems too good or too strange to be true, pause and ask yourself, what is more likely? Is it more likely that the laws of nature were suspended, or that someone is mistaken, or that the story has grown in the telling? This simple mental habit is a powerful filter for truth. Second, actively seek out the poetic magic in the world around you. The next time you look up at the moon, don't just see a light in the sky. Remember that it is a massive sphere of rock, held in orbit by the same force of gravity that keeps your feet on the ground. The next time you see a tree, don't just see leaves and branches. See a solar-powered factory, turning sunlight into life itself. By consciously connecting everyday things to their deep, scientific explanations, you can start to feel that sense of awe that Dawkins talks about. You can find magic not in escaping reality, but in diving deeper into it. That was a summary of The Magic of Reality by Richard Dawkins. We've explored some of the incredible ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The map can show you the landmarks and the main roads, but it can't give you the feeling of walking through the ancient forests, climbing the mountains, or meeting the people. The real magic happens when you explore it for yourself. This book is an invitation to do just that. If any of the ideas we've talked about today have sparked your curiosity, I truly encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning facts, it's about changing the way you see everything, and discovering the profound, poetic magic hidden in the world all around us. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please show your support by liking this summary and subscribing to Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.